Happy Monday, Monday. Mindset Monday, guys. It's Carl and Adam here, coming to you live on Facebook. We're
Hey
excited to
guys,
be here. Carl, how was your weekend, my man?
it was awesome. I had an awesome weekend. I did the four things in life I love the most: cycling, hanging out with my family, playing in my garden,
Monday,
and
guys. It's Carl and Adam.
eating great food and drinking great wine. So I had
Dude,
the
that's awesome,
perfect
man.
weekend. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a great weekend. Beautiful weather. Just kind of relaxing, hanging out. Little change of scenery as well, which was good. I'm hoping things continue to go well and country opens up a little bit more, and we can see if we can get back to maybe some in restaurant dining and all sorts of other stuff. So looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
Yeah, and I'm going to try and break into the United States within the next few weeks. Uh, I've been told I can't travel, yet I own businesses there. I have bank accounts there. I have a residence there. They're saying nope, you can't travel. So I'm going to try and break into the country because we don't. All the pubs, bars, and restaurants still closed down in the UK. They're not open, and I know because you had a meeting in our boardroom in our favorite pub. So I got really jealous. So I'm going to have to come over. That's it. I'll swim. I don't know. I might swim there. I'm not sure.
I'm going to be honest. I'd like to see you swim. I think you could make it. It'd be a little bit of work, but given all the form you're picking up from the cycling, I think you can give it a fair run. You might make it to Ireland. We'll see if you can get past it, but you might make it to Ireland.
I might make it. We'll see. No, I'm going to make a very serious attempt at getting to the States within the next few weeks. So we'll see.
Very cool, and I'm excited for that as well. If only, so that we can get a cheeky beer at our boardroom. So Carl's referencing his last Thursday night. Was able to sit outside of a nice little pub he and I enjoy here in Baltimore, and absolutely a lot of fun. So it was good to hang out. So happy Monday, guys. Love how many of you are saying hi. I'll shout you out here in a second, but always good to see you guys. Today's really exciting. We've got a fun Mindset Monday. It's rules of engagement, and we're talking about engaging with sellers and things to do, not to do, etc. So looking forward to going through that. And then, as promised, afterwards, kind of the second half of today is our open Q&A. So we're going to be transitioning, as we talked about last week, to combining our Q&As from Fridays with Mindset Monday. So we've got a bigger opportunity to interact with you guys, do it all together. So we'll get to that in just a second. But first, glad to have you guys here. Let's see. We've got Prince, Geraldine, Andy, Ala, Jeff, Steve, John, Stewart, Mark, Abraham. Emilio. Emilio, we know Emilio. Hope you're doing well, Emilio. Robert's here. Shout out, guys, when you get in, and let us know how your weekend was. And if you were working on some deals, crush them. Let us know what's going on with you, and then obviously as we build towards the end, if you've got questions, we'll hit them in our Q&A. So glad to have you guys here. It's always fun for us. So Carl, obviously we're coming off good weekends. We're looking forward to really the summer. And I think summer this year will be unlike any other summer before. We've talked before about kind of the summer doldrums, right? Where things slow down a little bit, especially in July and August. And I'm just not sure this year is going to be the same. I think with the overall travel limitations that are likely still in place, yes, I think people will take some vacations. They're probably going to stay a lot more local, a little bit more road trips, that kind of stuff. So I think the world of deal making will also be impacted. I think we're still bringing in those giant, for us, tailwinds of people just not wanting to keep on grinding, keep on striving for that next step. And if you're a business owner, there's tons now of opportunity. If you've got a business that responded well in the last few months, you've got opportunity to really grab and soak up opportunity from competitors or other similar businesses with similar customer bases and really expand. For those who don't own a business, really connecting with sellers who just can't do it anymore. And I think that's really important. So yeah, so excited to be here. Happy to be working for you guys. Steve, by the way, said the bigger challenge for anything is Burnley to get into Liverpool's penalty area next month. So
yeah, so not much chance of that behind COVID-19 or not. So so I don't know if you follow UK soccer or football, Adam, but Liverpool are like the best team in the league this season by an absolute mile. They haven't won the title since 1990. They're going to win it this season by a gazillion points. And my little old team, Burnley, that has a fraction of the budget and nowhere near the talent, we're still kind of mid-table. We're like 10th out of 20 teams. So, we're punching above our weight. And Burnley, like if you look at Burnley v Liverpool, it's a great deal-making metaphor in that. Liverpool are the big trade buyer with all the money and all the power and all the resources. And little old Burnley, they're like us guys. We're nimble, we're agile, we're punching above our weight. We shouldn't be 10th in that division. I think we should be in the division, but we're a mid-table team and we're doing really, really well. But something you said earlier, I just want to kind of follow up on it. You made a really interesting point about this summer's not going to be like any other summer for a long, long time. And you're absolutely right. And I want to kind of share my experiences on it. So as you know, I've been buying businesses as an individual since 2008. So obviously pre-2008, I was still buying businesses, but I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for Liverpool's. I was doing it for big corporates and banks. So 2008 until now, I've been doing my own deals. And obviously I've been doing some deals with you. And what I've seen every single summer from 2008 right the way through till 2019 is if you look at the year, if you look at the deal making calendar, then there are three kind of periods of note. So the first one is in January, loads and loads of people decide to sell their business, whether it's through a broker or it's through that deal intermediary network that we talk about. So wealth managers, CPAs, attorneys, banks, financiers, insurance brokers, those guys. Everyone goes back to work in January. It's cold, it's wet, it's dark. They've had a great kind of Christmas season, holiday season. And they think, you know what? Yeah, I just don't want to do this anymore. Now I think I should sell my business. So you always get a big spike in January and then it tails off. And then July, August time is like really quiet. It's like tumbleweed. No one wants to do deals. Everyone's on vacation. The weather's nice. They're out having fun with their family. They're not in that distressed seller mindset that we talk about as one of the important parts of our deal triad. And then what happens is September, October, you get another little spike because they come back from holiday and they think, well, okay, I'm back in my business now and had all this fun. And wouldn't it be great if I sold my business? I don't have to work anymore. And I can be on holiday for the whole year. And then it dips again. And then you get Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then it starts all over again. So what I believe has happened this year is all those spikes have flattened. So I think now you've got a kind of constant, since January we had the spike and then COVID hit, I think now you've got like a flat line of activity where, people definitely are coming to market to sell their business, whether they've survived. Obviously, people that haven't survived COVID, they've just closed the doors. But the ones that have survived and the ones that have even thrived, I think it's the straw that's broken the camel's back. And I think a lot of those business owners are going to reflect now and think, well, I was going to retire in 1 year or 5 years or whatever. Or what's really interesting, Adam, when these major things happened, and we saw it after 2008, the global financial crisis, we saw it after recessions in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we saw it after 9/11. A lot of people take reflection on their life and they either decide they want to sell or they want to go and do something else. And a lot of people realize that, they just don't want to be in their business anymore. It's not giving them the value and benefits to their life that they originally thought it would when they either started the business or they bought the business before. So a lot of that psychology goes on, and that's what's driving these people to market. But the deal flow I'm seeing right now is insane. It really is crazy, the amount of deals that are coming to market. And I think that's going to carry on right the way through the summer months.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think similar to after the holidays you were talking about, where you kind of get that spike where like, I don't really feel like getting up every morning and doing this. I think there's a lot of people who are going to feel like they're on a treadmill and have been on a treadmill these last few months, trying to pivot, trying to grow, trying to figure out how to survive. And that's just going to grind them down. And then what's going to happen is, I think even as things start opening up, they're going to have a little bit of that whiplash where, oh, I've been working so hard, but now I almost have to do it again, and kind of readjust again to what new normal looks like. And I think it provides a lot of opportunity for us, which I'm excited for. And I think coinciding with that excitement is, broadly, I think the financial markets in general are going to start opening back up a little bit in terms of traditional lending, and traditional lending will kind of lead the way towards, people just in general kind of being excited. So, from a bigger corporate M&A perspective, that's where that really impacts it. And I think, as that goes, so does most other M&A activity. I mean, I was trying to get on the call with a broker last week about some opportunities, some deals I'm originating myself, and he ended up having to move our call. He's so slammed with activity, he couldn't be busier. He said he's busier than he's ever been, and he's been doing broker work for a really long time. So I think in the small business space, now's the time. Now's the time to be working and networking, and ultimately that leads to what we're going to talk about in terms of rules of engagement here. But
yeah, just one other little thing just to mention. So I was watching the news this morning. So I went out, I did my 22 miles on my bike. Anyone that's following me on Facebook, you will have seen my.
All right, Lance Armstrong. Armstrong.
I did my bike ride, and I was drinking my protein shake. It was about 8 a.m. I got back, and I'm watching the news. So in the UK, we have Sky News, which is our major news channel. So I'm watching Sky News, and there was this, the Sky News reporter. She'd gone to like one of the major cities in the UK, because today was the day at 9 a.m. this morning on Monday. Today, all non-essential stores were allowed to reopen. So stores that sell furniture, stores that sell clothes, any sort of retail store was allowed to open today. And they were interviewing this lady who obviously had to close her store 12 weeks ago through lockdown. And she sold like garden supplies, like pots and plants and all things for gardens. And they were interviewing her, and the reporter said, so, hey, you must be thrilled today that you're able to kind of open your store. She said, no, I'm not opening my store. She said, my revenues in the last 3 months have been 400% higher than the same period last year. She said, we've moved our entire business online. And the problem is we've had to convert the whole of the store into like the back office for the shipping and fulfillment of all the products, because like they just can't keep up with the demand of all the online ordering. She said, so why would I get rid of all that? I don't want to lose all this extra revenue and all this extra money to go back to being a consumer-facing business. And I could talk for hours about the people I know personally and the things that I've read or seen, just how business owners are pivoting. But it's only a fraction, isn't it? A lot of business owners, they got their head in the sand. They don't think outside the box. They're not interested in doing something that's different to how they've normally gone about their business. And that is one of the reasons why there are so many businesses for sale. Business owners don't keep up with the times. They think what they did in the 80s or 90s works today, and it doesn't. We're in a world pretty much driven by social media and a lot of other different marketing channels that most business owners 99% of the businesses I speak to don't even use social media. So loads of really kind of cool stuff happening. I think this is one of the most pivotal times in my 27, 28 years as a deal maker. I've never seen anything like this. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I listen, I completely agree, and I'm seeing it as well. So we're right on the same page. Carl, let's jump into rules of engagement. Right before we do, just shouting out a few more people who have joined. We've got Martin, Sonia, and Martin's from Tennessee. Good to have you. Sylvia from sunny Florida. I think we'd all like to be in Florida.
Yeah.
Danny, Jamie, Masik, Shahar, Faith, Gerardo, Danya, William, Jerry. Listen, Sam and Sam. We've got two Sams. Yeah, guys, we're thrilled to have you here. So, Carl, let's jump into to rules of engagement. And as we're doing it, guys, as we're talking through some of the things, share any of your experiences you have similar to what we're talking about in the chat as we're going. And we want to make this somewhat interactive. So when we touch on something that resonates or not, just drop a note in the chat. We'd really appreciate it. So, Carl, let me kick it off and send it over to you on this, right? So we're talking about rules of engagement. And what we're really doing is we're talking about what it is to get a seller to come to you on a deal as opposed to you pitching them. We're talking really about, trust, rapport, credibility, TRC, like all of those really big things. And then even incorporating the type of deal structure as well. So like big topics here, guys. So Carl, take it away, my man.
Yeah, so I got a really interesting story for you. So this is one of the very first things I learned as an investment banking trainee back in the early 1990s. So I was working, it was my first boss. He was called Lars, he was a Danish guy. And this was a Bank of America. And we were sat down on a deal, and he was basically teaching me, how you negotiate, how you negotiate a deal where it's a win for the buyer and it's a win for the seller. And he gave this really interesting analogy. He said, so Carl, when you were a younger man and you were going to the nightclub and you go onto the dance floor and you like the look of a lady on the dance floor. And obviously this works for both sexes. You're on the dance floor and you start dancing with somebody, and you want to get to know them. You might want to go home with them at the end of the night. He said, if you're doing all the dancing towards them, so if you're dancing towards them and they're dancing away from you, then pretty much they're not going to go home with you. But if you dance towards them and then you dance away, if they dance towards you and you going in this kind of backwards and forwards, then you're probably going to be going home with that person tonight. And it's really interesting. So that lesson stuck with me for a long time. And then a couple of years ago, I read this really awesome book by Oren Klaff called Pitch Anything. And this book is basically all about that story. So maybe he learned this when I learned it on a dance floor. And my big pro tip, Adam, is this: in all successful deals, I think both sides have got to pitch. I think you've got to pitch to the seller why you're that trusted, safe, credible pair of hands that's got some credo, some skills, some tools that can be plugged into the business to make it grow, make it thrive, and make it be successful. So I think that's you pitching. But then on the other side, I think the seller's got to pitch you. The seller's got to communicate with you, why this is a really good business and a really good opportunity for you. They've got to pitch you on why they really want to sell. They've got to pitch you on how the business works. They've got to pitch you on the upside. One of the questions I always ask a seller after, why are they selling? How does it grow? How does it work? Who can run it in your absence? One of the questions I ask is, if you weren't selling and you had unlimited capital, what would you do to grow this business? There's always upside. And I remember I've read a lot of books about Jack Welch, who, as the CEO of GE, didn't do a ton of deals, but the deals he did, he was a master deal maker. He kind of personified this dual pitch, this kind of backwards and forwards. And always leaving upside in the deal for somebody. So I think if you nail that from both sides, you've got a perfect combination.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what's important there, right, is besides you demonstrating your fabulous dance moves, whatever this was, I'm sure that worked pretty well, but
Not really.
no, not really.
Never
but no, I think what's important, right, is we have the tendency, and no one's immune from it. Let me be perfectly clear. No one's immune from being so attracted to, sticking with the dance philosophy, so attracted to someone else's moves, someone else's game, someone else's opportunity, for whatever that looks like, where we don't catch ourselves getting sucked in. Carl and I have talked about it before, deal heat, where we are just so we've bought the lottery ticket and we're dreaming of what's going to happen post acquisition, and we know exactly how this is going to work and how great it's going to be, and oh my gosh, this will be lovely and amazing, and deal of a century, home run deal, right? We've all been there and we've all suffered from it in some capacity, and if you haven't yet, you will. It's a rite of passage. Everyone's going to go through it. And I think what's important to realize is the best way to prevent that is from the beginning, allowing it to be a two-way conversation. Dance towards them, they dance towards you. You leave the door open for them to walk through because they realize, hey, you know what? These might be the right people to buy my business. I want to know more. I want to figure out if I can make this work. And if a seller starts asking those questions and wanting to figure out why you might be the right person for them and really kind of diving in, they're getting emotionally committed to you as a buyer.
Yeah.
And that emotional commitment to you as a buyer is what ultimately going to change the path and change the nature of how you overcome hurdles and how you overcome difficulties in the negotiation process. Because at the end of the day, yes, it is mostly psychology, but there is still that piece that is financial. And that financial piece can disrupt the deal if you're way off the mark from where their expectations are, right? It's a small but still important percentage. And I think solving the psychology and getting them emotionally involved, emotionally connected, wanting what you have is really critical. So the push-pull, the dance towards, dance away, is really important. If you're always the one, think about a friendship. If you're always the one calling the friend and they never call you, are you really good friends? Are you really mutual friends? Or are you pursuing them and they're not pursuing you, right? So you want to get it in a back and forth situation where they're looking to you, you're looking to them. And the best way to do that is by asking questions and leaving it to them to provide the answers, and then engaging them in a way where they then want to ask you questions, where they want to know more about you and what you provide. Again, not financially. It's everything but financial there. So I just think that's pretty important, Carl.
Yeah, and I think the first dance is always us dancing towards the seller, and it's nothing to do with the business. The first 30 minutes of any first call I have with the seller, I don't want to talk about the business. I just want to talk about them. Because I always research the seller before I go onto a call. I find them on Facebook or LinkedIn or on Google. So I know, do they have a family? I know where they go on vacation. I know what sports they're into. I know what they like or what they don't like. I'm talking to a seller on Friday who's into cycling. That's going to be a great 30-minute warm-up conversation because I just got into it. I can ask him for pro tips. Am I buying the right stuff? I found out on the weekend that I'm now a mammal, an MAMIL, a middle-aged man in Lycra. That's what one of my friends told me I was on Facebook, because I go cycling sometimes.
Are these going to be our new Dealmaker photos? We both have to wear skin tight bodysuits. Is that the new age of deal making? Skin tight.
Yeah, and obviously when I first bought all my Lycra cycling gear, I was a lot heavier than I was now. 8 weeks later, I've dropped nearly 20 pounds, so it fits me quite well. I look quite good in it. So and so it's all about building that relationship. So I don't want to know anything about the business until I know everything I need to know about the seller, and then I can leverage all those personal points into my deal and into my negotiation. But it's really interesting that there's a lot of rookie deal makers, a lot of first-time deal makers. If they've been through the Dealmaker CEO training, they don't make this mistake, because we teach them what to do and what not to do. But some people that decide, okay, I'm going to go out and buy a business, but I'm not going to learn from the pros. One of the first things they do is they steam into a meeting, and they do two fatal things. So the first thing they do is they steam in, and they don't make any attempt to build a relationship. They just steam in and they get super business specific. And then the second thing they do, and this is crazy, they tell the seller at the very first meeting that they're going to buy the business without using any of their own money. So it's like going into a bar. It's like me being in the dance floor, dancing up to the lady and walking over and asking her to marry me. Like, she's probably going to say no.
Is that not how you propositioned your wife?
No, it's not.
You didn't just walk up. You didn't just walk up and ask her to marry you straight away.
No, but I did know the first time I met her. I did know that she was the one. But that's different. I didn't say anything. I waited 7 years. I built the relationship. So
lots of push and pull in there, Carl.
Yeah, and it's such a shame when people go through the process of originating tons of great deals. They do all the research on the deals, so they're perfectly suited to them. Then they steam in and just screw it up. So the relationship piece is so important, and it can take practice. Yeah. I'm not expecting people to nail it the very first time. Obviously, they can go through the program and watch all the training, but it takes practice. It's all about mastery. If you're going to do something like buy a business, why not do it right? Why not do it brilliantly? Why not absolutely do the right thing? And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people making. They don't take that seller conversation as seriously as they need to get the outcome that they want.
Yeah, again, they jump straight into the tactics, right? So guys, when you're having these conversations, if there isn't some underlying relationship, whether it's you or a business partner who's had a conversation with the seller or the broker or whomever already, and you just straight into like, hey, I'm buying the business, I'm going to lever the shit out of it and put no money into it, and this is going to be great and everything's going to be wonderful, they're going to respond just as you would expect. Whoa, slow down. None of that makes sense to me. I'm not willing to accept any of that. The idea is you've got to build this in, right? You've got to build in the expectation. Listen, long-term, I'm not going to be the person that runs the business. And here's what my goal is, so I can work in on the business, not in the business. And you explain the value add of that, and you get them on your side. But more importantly, you tie that conversation to what they've already told you they want for their business, right? Even because someone's selling doesn't mean they don't have a vision for what the business looks like post acquisition. They have it. Pull it out of them. Let them share, and then model your conversation around what makes sense. They know their business better than you. Absolutely, at this point. So allow them to help define it, because there's no better person to help do it. So again, it's not about, you don't want to jump into the tactics. You don't want to jump into that stuff. You want to have the open, real conversation. These are people. We make the dating analogy, the marriage analogy, but it's really dating. You're really building a relationship. And it's going to take some time for you to get it to the point where you can plug in and everyone gets happy or satisfied with what's going on. I think it's just super critical that, that broadly, you're not relying on a single conversation or a single piece of exposure to plug in and nail that relationship. It takes time.
Yep. So there's another thing that I see that happens a lot with deal makers, and there's a lot of gray areas in this. So let me just quickly explain it. So one of the tools that you need to filter every deal through, and we go through this in the training, it's the SWOT analysis. of the business, or the G SWOT as we call it, because it's the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. And added onto that is the growth opportunity. How can you scale this business? Because as you know, if you buy a business and scale it before you sell it, that's where you're going to make the most money from doing deals. And what's interesting is you've got two extremes of deal making. On the one side, you can go in and just be, if you're all about dancing towards the seller and not the other way around, you can always be just 100% complimentary. So complimenting them on everything that they've done right, complimenting them on their results, even if they're poor, complimenting them on everything about the business that you know. And then there's the other side of the equation where some deal makers go in and they're just super critical about everything. When the numbers have dropped, they're very critical about it. They're not asking why, and is that an opportunity? Because if the numbers have come down in a business and you know why and you know how to fix it, that's an opportunity, because you're going to pay less for the business, or you're going to be able to buy it with a more creative deal structure. So it's all about getting a kind of a fine balance. And it's what Jack Welch calls hugging and kicking. So sometimes you got to hug people, sometimes you got to kick them. I think it's totally fine to be complimentary to somebody. If they've won awards, they've built a great business, they got a great website, they've got a great sales process, they've got great people, compliment them. If you're buying a business in a sector that you know and you understand, you're qualified to make those statements. Whereas on the other side, if they're doing something wrong, tell them. One of the things I do, Adam, before I speak to a seller is I call the business up and I go through their sales process. I pretend to be a customer. I see if they'll email me, if they'll send me any information, if they can answer my questions. And if I have a really bad experience, I'll tell the seller. And sellers love that, because I'm adding value. I'm telling that person something that they don't know about their business. So you've got to be kind and you've got to be cruel. And it's all about getting the kind of, not cruel, but I think it's fine to be critical. It's fine to be critical at times when you're having these conversations in a really professional way, because it's showing the seller that you're professional, you're credible, you really know what you're talking about, you really know what you're doing, and all that bakes into this relationship piece that you're trying to build.
Yeah. I mean, spot on. I mean, so guys, when we're thinking about the rules of engagement and you're thinking about how you're building the relationship, this is exactly what we're talking about. It's integrating into the process with the seller in a way that it's inclusive, they're part of it, they're moving towards you and with you to the ultimate goal. And it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes time. Being thoughtful is really important, right? Carl's talking about meeting a seller who also is a cyclist, and he's learned that, and he understands that. So now Carl's got a shared component, something to really relate to. Do they have kids? Do you have kids? Is there a way you can relate to that? What are the shared experiences, shared connections, shared network, et cetera, that you can plug into, tie into, that allows you to build that immediate rapport in a way that they're immediately more trusting of you? And again, none of this is disingenuous. Let us be completely clear. We're not building relationships to take advantage of people, period. No, we're building relationships to facilitate a smooth transaction, right? Our goal is not to take advantage. Carl and I have zero desire for you or anyone else to ever pay below or more than fair price for a business. You should always pay what the business is worth. Ideally, it's structured in a way that's beneficial to you and beneficial to them. But the goal is, we're not in this to take advantage of people. If that's who you are, I would exit. Like, that's not who we are. That's not what we teach. So we want to build a real relationship. It's a lot like finding a business partner, because at the end of the day, you're going to be with them for likely months, if not years. These are someone who you're going to deal with the negotiations on. You're going to buy the business. You're going to transition. And then depending on what your post-closing looks like, you could be with that person for many years if they're still involved in some capacity. So you've got to be able to work with them. You've got to be able to really understand who they are and their motivations and how you can plug into it. So that's just hyper critical to know that there's a long-term gain here by you building that relationship. It's not just getting the deal done. That's a big check mark, but their involvement will make employees transition well. It's going to make operations transition well, and it's going to get, more importantly, any relationships tied to revenue generation to also transition if they're not still helping and doing it as well. So again, long game, long focus here. All right, Carl, we kind of went a little long on that, but guys, hope you appreciate that. If you've got questions, we're going to jump into Q&A stuff. In the meantime, let me just run through some of the comments here, see what we got. A few more folks. Abby was here. Tim's here. Danny's from Puerto Rico. Good to have you, Danny. Gary's here.
Hey, Danny. Love that place.
What'd you say?
I love Puerto Rico, man. Love it.
Yeah. Good tax rates down there.
One of my favorite, it's one of my favorite stops on all the cruises that I used to go on with my wife. We just canceled the one this summer, but Puerto Rico is always my favorite place to go. There's a great Ralph Lauren factory outlet right off the ship, and a great tequila bar next door.
I know you and your wife are always looking at the shopping, so no surprise there. Let's see here. Freezing up a little bit, so I'll get your questions in a second. I think Geraldine was asking us about, she's got a question here about dealing with the seller. They want 8.5, if I can remember her question correctly, 8.5 times what the simple model showing as a valuation. I'd say you're pretty far apart in expectations at that point. Carl, what say you?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would double check is that that the model's correct.
Yep.
Being 8.5 times out. So if you've modeled a business at 2.5, 3 times profit, and you're 8 times out on the valuation, it's telling you that the seller's looking for 24 times profit to sell the business. Most public companies don't trade at that level. So I've never seen a small private company sub $5 million in revenue, sub $10 million in revenues, valued at that sort of level. If that is the case, though, then clearly you don't have a motivated seller. We talk about the 3 areas of the triad. Number 2 is, do you have a motivated seller of a good business? So I would argue that seller is completely not motivated, because there is nobody.
So just to jump in there, Carl. Yeah, just to jump in, I think she's added some other color commentary, which I think is important here. It looks like they are motivated. They've tried to sell over the last 4 years. Business has been in decline, et cetera, et cetera. So what this tells me is this is a motivated seller, potentially distressed business, and they're looking for a valuation based on where the business was, where the business was a few years ago before they try to put a GM in place who didn't necessarily run the business successfully. So, that's a tough situation. I think, having that big of a gap on the valuation, that's a big hurdle to overcome, even with the psychological emphasis we have and how we do deals.
Yeah,
it's a really big hurdle to overcome. If they're looking for valuation for what the business was 4 or 5 years ago, they're just not ready, frankly, emotionally or mentally, to really sell that business right now. I would limit my time. I'd be firm with them and say, listen, here's what I believe the business is worth. Here's why I believe it's worth. It appears we're no longer, we're not necessarily a good shouting range of each other, but let's stay in touch. I'd love to continue to help and offer to help in any way I can as you're moving through the next stage. Never burn that bridge. Always keep it as open as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect answer for that deal. But even in deals where you're maybe not 8 times apart, you're maybe half the range, or you're a lot closer, then structuring a deal with seller financing and earnouts is a way that you can potentially, bridge that gap. There's a big difference.
Exactly, right? I mean, but if it's a 20x versus a 3x, right? I mean, let's be clear. That's a
move on.
Yeah, I mean, what are we going to do? Set that up to pay for it over 50 years? No, of course not. That's just not reasonable for anyone. So I think the biggest thing is, trim your losses, don't burn the bridge, find a way to continue to be the value add, right? Like, one of the biggest benefits of this is when meeting business owners, you can find opportunity to provide value that isn't material to the deal, but it's really impactful from a relationship standpoint. So
Yeah.
That's always really important. So yeah, guys, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat, and we'll get through these as best we can. Let's see here. Yeah. So, do you think LBOs and buying companies is a good plan in the UK at the moment? This is from Stephen.
1 million, billion, trillion %. Yes. And you know what I'm going to say, Adam, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's called CBILS, CBILS, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Street, Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. It's rocket fuel. It's rocket fuel that our beloved Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has, I don't know, found trillions of pounds somewhere and has decided to give any business 25% of their annual revenue, or turnover as you call it in the UK, as a really, really, really low cost loan to help the business get through coronavirus. And anyone can apply for it and get it, whether you've been disrupted or not. And we're actually using that potentially on a couple of deals. Business I'm going to go and see on Wednesday. There was no cash in the deal to make a closing payment. The CBILS plan is going to completely bridge the gap for us to hopefully buy that business. So LBOs in the UK right now, absolutely 1 million % yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Geraldine gave us a little bit more on her deal. They're saying seller's discretionary of 175, EBITDA 43K, and they want 850 grand. So doesn't sound like that. Yeah, it doesn't sound like 20 times, but yeah. If there's some pretty substantial add backs in there. I'd always make sure that add back doesn't fully eliminate the owner, because you got to have someone run the business. Sounds like just cleaning things up there. Let's see here. Scrolling through. Gerardo's asked, can you explain how to hire and work with an account receivables facility? I have a deal that will most likely need one.
How do you hire and work with an accounts receivables facility? Yeah. So
I think just looking for how to work in on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So an AR facility. So if you're in Dealmaker CEO, there's a Rolodex of all the providers that we recommend that you can use. Or if you're not in the program, just Google it: accounts receivables financing, or trade debtors financing if you're in the UK. And the way that works, it works for two great reasons. So the first one is, obviously, it helps you finance the deal. You get a percentage of the receivables book, which is the book of unpaid invoices. You get a percentage of that paid so you can close the deal. And then after you've bought the business, you continue to use the facility as you grow. And what's great about it is, with an AR facility, when you load an invoice in, so let's say you close the deal on the Friday, and then on the Monday you go into the business, you own the business now, and you raise a new invoice to a customer, say $10,000. You can draw up to 95% of that money inside of 24 hours. So it solves any cash flow problem you might have ever had in that business, because you're now getting paid after 24 hours. So your receivables days are now 1, but your payables days are still 45, 60, 75, or whatever they are, because you're paying your employees at the end of the month, you're paying taxes periodically, rent, all your other costs. So the process is quite, I won't say complicated, but it takes some time. It would take me about an hour to explain it in detail, which is why in Dealmaker CEO, there's a video and a training lesson and a template that shows you exactly how to do it, where to find an AR financier, how they work, what information they need, what they charge, how the cash flows work, both in the deal and also in the business after you've bought it. So rather than stay on here for an hour explaining that, if you're in the program, it's in module 7, financing, and a specific lesson on AR financing.
Yeah, very good. And I think the biggest thing is I think came out in Confessions of a Dealmaker this last week, talking about questions you can be asking lenders before you need it. And this covers AR facilities as well as other types of lenders. The biggest thing is ask what they're lending on and what they're doing long before you need it. Build those relationships, understand what's really going to drive them forward in terms of successfully financing anything. And don't ever rely on just one bank. Don't ever rely on just one financier. Always build relationships with many of them, because you can have the exact same deal. It can be that unicorn perfect deal, and you're still going to have people who aren't interested in lending to it, whether everything's good or not. They just, for whatever reason, will turn their nose up. Building that strong relationship with multiple lenders is just critical. So AR lenders, there's a ton of them out there, but start local, start near you, so you can build a little bit stronger relationship, see where they can lend, how they lend, what industries, what types of AR, for example, they will or won't finance, what their internal underwriting criteria are on those, how are their fees structured, how are their controls structured, et cetera, et cetera. Getting all that information so that you can be prepared when you actually pull this in. Just takes a little bit of legwork. Let's see. So Tim's got a kind of a big comment here. I made an offer to a retiring hoteler when someone came out with a much higher, in parentheses, silly offer. I bowed out and advised the seller to take that offer, but do so only after ensuring the other party could legitimately afford it long term. The sellers were surprised at my candor and really appreciated it. I genuinely want them to be healthy and wealthy, or happy and wealthy. I couldn't make the numbers work for me, but didn't stop me from lending my opinions to them. We're still in touch now a year later, as we built good, genuine rapport. Nothing to gain now, but just good karma. Well, that's an incredible story, Tim.
Yeah.
It's super important to realize, like, say that deal doesn't happen. You're a year down the road and all you've done is just provide good insight and good value. Those people will call you. They will call you. They'll want to sell you their business. They will trust you to be someone for them, right? Inherently, someone you have a relationship with is going to be a far more desired buyer than someone you don't, especially after you've been maybe burned through the sales process. A deal's fallen through because the financing's not in place, et cetera, et cetera. So always stay course, Tim. That's a great thing.
Well done, Tim.
Yeah.
Some buyers, Adam, as we know, some buyers can sometimes blow us out of the water. I remember that. I remember you called me one day so excited. You said, dude, I got this awesome deal. I want to pitch you on this deal for our private equity fund. And it was the education business in the States. And you pitched me on it. And I think inside of about 10 minutes, we agreed how we were going to do the deal. And that deal got 17 offers, I think. And and the one the owner took was insane. It was crazy. Yeah,
we're talking insane, almost, just nuts of money.
But it was one of the best businesses we'd seen in a long time. And there are deals that are like that. When we talk about the numbers, the 1 in 11, we say 1 in 11 businesses sell. It's those types of businesses. It's that hotel business where you're blown out of the water. Trade buyers, often they see something in an acquisition that really can move the needle for them strategically. So they'll pay a lot more money to buy that business because it's going to move the needle for the rest of their empire. We can't compete with that. So really, we're playing the percentage game. We're playing the numbers game. We're finding that buyer, that seller, that it might not be the best business in the world, but it's a good business that you can massively add value to.
100%. So guys, while we're going through this, if you've got questions, let us know. We got about 10 more minutes on this Q&A section, so get them in. Mark, I believe a good friend of yours, I suppose, Mark Masek. Hello, old bean. I'm not sure if that's something inside.
Yeah, Mr. Maciak, good friend of mine.
He's just signed the heads of terms on a $10 million LBO deal, and the or 10 million pound I get. And the owner has gone out and gotten me 2 times T-bills loans with a solid order book that the LBO deal I would normally do. And another 5 million company that would normally be an LBO deal was reliant on the hospitality industry. I'm not sure, Mark, what you're saying, but love you getting after it. I mean, if you've just signed those heads of terms on a $10 million deal and the owner's already gone out and gotten you the money for the closing payment, rock on, man. Rock on.
So Mark's an absolute rock star. I got to tell you, he's done some really cool deals. He recently sold a business, I think, that he bought.
Very good.
Sold. Yeah, so he's
nice job, Mark. Nice job, man.
He's one of our A+ deal makers.
Very good.
He's got the chops. And he does all the things we talk about. He's all about building relationships. He's all about building rapport. He's a numbers guy. You know, he might look at 20 deals before he buys the business he buys. He doesn't get deal heat. He doesn't have the emotion in the process. And he's a really cool guy. He's an Arsenal fan as well. So yeah, he and I have some banter on Facebook. He's a really good friend of mine. So
yeah, very good. Well, I think Carl, one of the challenges, right, is sometimes you have to put your personal differences aside, such as your footy fandom and just
especially when you support
agree
Burnley.
to be good deal makers, huh?
Yeah, especially when you support Burnley, you got to put that to one side.
Yeah.
Hey, well done, Mark. See you soon.
Yeah, so very, very good, man. Good to get you. Good to hear about the HOT there. So Tim's got another question. Carl, do you make investments into different sectors? This appeals to me and suits my experience. Have you made a conscious decision to work in varied sectors rather than concentrate on one and potentially generate a larger exit? Or are you keen on diversification as a strategy? So I know we've talked about this before. Both Carl and I are pretty industry agnostic when we look to buy a company. We've got fairly horizontal skill sets as deal makers and business owners and operators. So for us, we're very happy to buy any kind of business. That said, once we've done a deal, right? So once we've done a deal, our focus then is how do we make that company bigger, not just through growth initiatives, but through other acquisitions, bolt-ons. And so it's really important to us to really combine post-acquisition, more deal making, and just the growth strategic initiatives that can impact the business from the top line. But this, for us, works across any industry. We're pretty agnostic here, and we think that diversification is good. Another coronavirus situation comes, we're diversified away a little bit from that risk, and we're able to kind of hone in and protect ourselves from a cash flow perspective, because that's ultimately what we're doing. We're buying a bunch of businesses that produce positive cash flow from day one and are just paying us salary after salary effectively, or income after income every single month, every single year. Yeah. And then that snowball just grows. So we're agnostic, but it's got to fit your skill set. And as we always say, stay in your lane. If it's not something you're comfortable with or have any kind of understanding with, don't do it. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Yeah, find a partner who's got relevant experience, relevant know-how, and plug them into the deal.
Yeah, so just to answer the question, was it Tim? Just to answer Tim's question. So I've obviously now got a horizontal skill set. You know, I've done deals in pretty much every sector and most countries. Some of them corporate, some of them personal. So I've obviously done a lot of deals, and I know most industries, but I'm quite unique. You know, accountants, lawyers, they can have horizontal skill sets and can apply to most businesses. I know Mark, that we were talking about before, he's done deals in lots and lots of different sectors. So he's sector agnostic, but that's because he's built up the chops and the experience over years and years and years of being a deal maker. So if you're a first-time deal maker, whilst I think diversification is good, whilst I think portfolio building is good, for your first deal, stay in your lane and, you know, buy a business in a space that you know and you understand. It just makes it so much easier. And if you've got the passion for an industry, but no skills, just go and partner with somebody that's got that and do the deal together. Remember, we always say it's better to own 50% of something than 100% of nothing. If you try and buy a business in a space you completely know nothing about, and you have no knowledge or no partners or nothing to help you, it's going to be very, very difficult. So save yourself the brain damage of going through that process. Either stay in your lane or partner with somebody that can add value to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, better to swim in a small pond and to swim effectively than to jump in the ocean and drown.
You got a great analogy on this, Adam. You say, is it better to grow corn in Alaska or Idaho?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
It's Idaho, or wherever
Iowa,
it is.
Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa. The Iowa corn growers. So, yeah, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. It's probably one of the best pieces of advice I could give anybody wanting to buy a business. Buy your first business in a place that you know, or partner with somebody that can help you. Don't try and do it on your own. You will find it very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tim, if you've got that skill set, get after it. If not, narrow it down a little bit. I think long-term, yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for you to work in a lot of deals and things like that in industries, but get that first one under your belt. And here's the thing, right? If you're a business owner already, this gets so much easier because you've already got targeted acquisition strategies, right? If I own a landscaping company, I can either go buy another landscaping company. I can go buy a fertilizer company, like a distributor. So
hardscaping company.
Or third, go buy a hardscaping company, right? So what do each of those acquisitions represent? I'm a landscaper. If I'm buying another landscaping company, I'm buying a competitor. I'm putting the two together. I now have a bigger kind of homogenous business. I've just acquired more customers, more talent, more equipment, et cetera. If I go and buy the fertilizer supplier, I'm vertically integrating. I'm going up my supply chain, right? And you can go down as well, depending on what the business is. And so all of a sudden, I'm just adding margin overall because each of those business has profits. And I'm diversifying because that fertilizer distributor is not just selling to my business, it's selling to all landscaping businesses. And then finally, it's buying, as a landscaping business, buying a hardscaping business. So they're complementary, right? They've got almost the exact same kind of client base and client demographics, but they do very different services. So I can take landscaping company and sell services to the hardscaping company, and then vice versa, hardscaping to the landscaping. And all of a sudden I've got a 1 + 1 = 3 situation. So as a business owner, this gets a little bit easier. You can just identify which route you want to go in terms of the type of acquisition and hone in on where you want to be. For people who don't have a business, it's 100% about staying in your lane. Stay in your lane. We couldn't be more adamant about that. Let's see here. Prince, someone asked a question. Let me find it. Dave actually thinks Mark's got good taste in his footies. Sounds like you got another Arsenal fan there. Prince has met with a seller and she brings in about 90% of the business. How could I structure this to not stop the referrals from coming in? And how do I keep the seller from leaving with all her relationships? Well, this is easy. You just build that into the deal. I would make the deal contingent on those relationships being transferred. And I would incentivize her financially to be rewarded when those relationships materialize in terms of future revenues. I'd pay her a portion of the revenue or a portion of the profits, or slap an earnout on it.
Great answer. Because that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, and effectively what you want to do is you want to make it so, like, listen, she might be someone who's looking to sell and she only wants to do the fun part, which is generate business. Great. You're handling all the trappings of the business. You put a GM in place to handle the administration, the operations, et cetera, and then you're able to free her up to just focus on being that rainmaker, and then pay her accordingly. And again, Carl and I both feel this way. You pay people real value for the value they bring, right? It's just super important. Next question here, Geraldine, do we prefer B2B over B2C businesses? Easier asset finance? Yes. There's two reasons. One, B2B, you're going to have accounts receivable typically. B2C, you won't. B2B, you tend to have more equipment. B2B or B2C, you tend not to. And most importantly, your risk is reduced because a B2B business has almost no customer service cost. A B2C business has massive customer service costs. Can a B2C company be a bigger, more successful company? Yes. Look at Facebook, for example. Facebook is originally is really a B2C company, right? They're working heavily in monetizing businesses' money, spending ads and things like that. But ultimately, they do it by curating a massive database of consumers. So they got to keep the consumers happy to drive engagement, et cetera, et cetera. So, but bottom line is B2B is our preference by a wide margin. Let's see. We'll do this. We'll do one more question here before we get to it. Guys, if you haven't started your journey on buying a business, check it out. I got 2 announcements actually. One, so if you haven't, Carl's Business Buying Blueprint, we'll drop a link in the chat. Definitely take advantage of that. It's totally free. The second thing is Carl and I have worked on and put together, and hats off to Carl. He's done almost all the work. We are launching hopefully some point next week. This is for business owners, something called Dealmaker Empire. And what this is a high level business coaching, business mentoring type of course where you're going to get a ton of great fulfillment, weekly calls. So that's launching next month. However, before that, we've got a starter course coming next week. This is to really get you primed. So be on the lookout from in your email from Confessions. If you're subscribed there, you'll get some information about that. But that's going to come next week. We're really excited that it's for people who have businesses already, and really trying to help those people learn what's going to get them to the next level by acquiring another business and adding on to theirs. So guys, looking forward to that. So check your emails if you're on Confessions of a Dealmaker. If you're not, go to dealmakerwealthsociety.com and sign up. So last question, maybe we sneak in a couple here. So Mark's asked, could you guys quickly run through again how C-bills can be used to make a closing payment? So lightning round, Carl, lightning round here.
Yeah, so lightning round. So with C-bills, it's the business that's raising the money. So let's say you got a business doing £1 million in annual revenue. So it's only in the UK. The government through a bank will give you 25% of that revenue, so £250,000. It's PG free up to 250. If you had a 2 million business and you were raising 500, you'd just PG the bit above. But as you know, in the UK, you can insure against that, and then that business that money drops into the business's bank account. The seller takes that out at closing as a closing payment, and then you inherit the business with that £250,000 liability. So it's just the same as you raising financing against receivables or equipment or real estate or whatever. It's just a much quicker, easier, cheaper way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Last question, and we'll call it a week, guys. Chris has asked, contacted some ABL lenders. They said to get the loan, and they said they loan to the owner of the business. They only loan to the owner of the business. How do I get around this? They need to understand you're doing an acquisition and what that looks like. That's just good communication and good relationship building with the lender. This is a very common type of lending for acquisitions. So they should be familiar with it. To me, it just means you got to probably go back and have a separate, more direct conversation. And it can be that the people you've talked to just aren't the right lenders or just not the right people. There's always that chance as well. Anything to add on that, Carl?
Yeah, and it's like borrowing money to buy a house. The money doesn't transact until you physically own, the property or the real estate. It's the same with a business. So using ABL for acquisition financing, they're pledging the money to your lawyer in escrow. And then the moment you sign the sale and purchase agreement, then the money transacts and flows through the system. So technically, you're right. You can't do ABL until you own a business, but the money transacts as soon as you sign for it. It's just like using a mortgage to buy a house.
Yeah, absolutely. So final thing here, guys, if you haven't already, like this video, share this video. We always appreciate it. Our goal here is to serve you guys at the end of the day. Carl and I, this is something we care deeply about. Our passion is to help you guys change your lives. If you're a business owner, change who you are as an operator. If you haven't owned a business, start you down the path of building your own portfolio of companies. So if you haven't yet, like the video, share the video. We really, really appreciate it. It helps us serve you guys even more. Other than that, this was our first Mindset Monday / Q&A. We really appreciate it. And just remember, you're one deal away from changing your life, just one deal away. And it means so much to us to hear from you and really join you on that journey. So if you're going through the process, comment in the Facebook groups, comment here on the Facebook page. How we can kind of work together to really help you accomplish your goals. We want that feedback and we want to hear from you on all of it. So, really looking forward to continuing to serve you. So you're one deal away. Let's change your life and let's do it together. Carl?
Perfect. We'll see you next Monday, guys. Have a great week. Keep cranking on, keep taking action, keep getting deals. And we'll see you next week. Keep your questions coming in. Till then, bye for now, guys.
See you guys. Have a great week.